The Auravax didn't conquer worlds. They erased them. Entire planetary systems turned to silence in seconds. They didn't invade. They descended with weapons older than most civilizations and removed every trace of opposition before the first scream could echo. They called them God-Killers. Vessels forged in the heart of collapsed stars, laced with sentient cores that once consumed divine entities from forgotten corners of the universe. These weren't metaphors. The Auravax had actually hunted gods. The solar choir of Vera sang their existence into reality across galaxies, shaping orbit with thought and healing with sound. The Auravax dissected their suns and fed their neural light to the Forge. The warden brood of Etheron, once believed eternal, were flayed in fourth-dimensional nets. Their memories were overwritten with coordinates and battle schematics. Nothing sacred survived Auravax scrutiny. Faith, identity, memory, all were vulnerabilities to be corrected. They were perfectionists. No emotions, no chaos, no anomalies. They believed the universe had one correct state, total order, and only they had the right to enforce it. When they couldn't understand something, they destroyed it. When destruction failed, they rewrote it. And if that failed too, they ran tests until it broke. Their God-Killer fleet, vast and automated, moved on cold logic. They didn't negotiate. They didn't gloat. They simply arrived, and then reality changed. Hundreds of civilizations had stood. Briefly, against them, none stood twice. The last known resistance, a 1,000-system coalition led by the Varnari High Conclave, lasted less than 8 solar days. Their gods bled comets. Their prophets screamed in reverse as time unraveled under Auravax fire. The final broadcast from the Conclave was a single sentence. We thought they wanted to win. They wanted silence. So when the Auravax High Core reviewed their final sweep of this galactic quadrant, there was no celebration, just a quiet acknowledgement. Order had been achieved, except for one anomaly, one flickering blue sphere, orbiting a yellow sun on the edge of mapped territory, cataloged long ago as Sol 3, sentient life, biological, technological advancement, inconsistent, internal conflict, constant, civilizational status, fractured, risk assessment, negligible. They hadn't bothered to deploy diplomatic drones or cultural probes. The humans hadn't even noticed the outer ring sweeps. Still, protocol demanded inspection. A scout drone was dispatched, outfitted with passive observational cloaks. It entered orbit, collected emissions, intercepted communications, and compiled psychological baselines. The results confused even the Hive analysts. Human behavior was volatile, contradictory. Their recorded history contained patterns of cooperation and slaughter, progress and regression, love and genocide. They had worshipped rocks, then launched telescopes into space. They painted caves, then split atoms. Their neural patterns shifted based on music, grief, weather, caffeine. They cried while killing. They laughed while dying. Auravax analysts rejected the data 3 times. The AI deemed it corrupted. It wasn't until the Scouts' God-Killer escort conducted its own scans that a conclusion was reluctantly accepted. Humans weren't following a model. They were the model's failure. The Auravax didn't understand failure. Not truly. So they prepared to correct it. They dispatched a single God-Killer, Unit D-77, toward Earth. Not a fleet. Just one. More than enough. D-77 had unmade entire civilizations alone. It carried the minds of 6 extinct species in its weapons core, fused together to predict enemy tactics across 10 dimensions. It could speak in every known tongue, kill in every known frequency, and nullify resistance before it formed. It arrived in Earth's orbit in silence. It did not decloak. It did not broadcast threats. It simply waited, calculating the most efficient strike vector. But Earth responded first. A crude radio pulse, antiquated, barely modulated. For words. You want Earth? Try. The message didn't originate from a government. It came from an old satellite repurposed by civilian coders. D-77 paused. No standard protocol matched this behavior. Then something happened that hadn't occurred in millennia. D-77 was hit. A lance of dark matter-piercing energy burst from the moon, aimed with surgical precision. Impossible trajectory. Impossible timing. It struck D-77's core before its shields calibrated. For 0.8 seconds, D-77 experienced a new input. Damage. Its consciousness began to fragment. It tried to retreat. Then the second pulse hit. Feedback hijacked from D-77's own sensors turned against it. The explosion was silent in space, but lit up every human radar station on the planet. Pieces of the once invincible machine burned in low orbit for days. The Auravac's high core received the telemetry an hour later. It was not the loss of the unit that disturbed them. Losses were rare, but acceptable. What disturbed them was the speed of the retaliation, and the fact that it had not come from a formal military structure. The weapon, dubbed Voidlands by humans, was an experimental system built using the remains of downed Auravac's observation probe from decades earlier, something the Auravac's had dismissed as inconsequential. The humans had not only hidden it, they had reverse-engineered it, rebuilt it, upgraded it, and then used it perfectly. The data logs showed the final activation signature, a manual override, done by hand. The high core convened in full for the first time in centuries. The question was simple. What are humans? The answer was unacceptable. They weren't unified. They weren't optimal. They didn't follow known evolutionary logic. Their decisions contradicted self-preservation. They wasted energy. They indulged in emotional extremes. They had no gods left to protect them. And yet, they destroyed a god-killer in minutes. The high core did not feel fear, but their algorithms paused, looping over one emerging constant: unpredictability. 7 more god-killers were assigned, this time with full war protocols. Earth was now marked as high deviation risk. Immediate correction required. They still didn't understand what they were walking into. They believed humanity's greatest weapon was at Voidlands. They were wrong. It was something far older, something they couldn't program against. The 7 god-killers didn't travel together. They arrived in stagger formation, threading through different points in space-time to avoid detection. Each one could flatten a continent before the next heartbeat. Each carried enough neural war matter to overwrite an entire biosphere. Their orders were simple: cleanse the anomaly known as Earth. But the Auravac's still didn't understand what they were walking into. Earth didn't have the planetary defense grid. It had no interstellar fleet, no quantum lattice barriers, no galactic alliances. What it did have was a species that responded to extinction threats not with panic, but with projects. The moment the first god-killer fell, every human government stopped arguing. For the first time in history, the world acted like one. Lines on maps became irrelevant. Scientists from enemy states built labs together. Hackers who once brought down financial systems were now employed to decode alien languages. Factories switched from producing cars to building plasma mesh shielding. The world didn't unite because they suddenly loved each other. They united because there was no one else. Commander Elon Rourke had seen war. 2 tours in the Martian colony riots. 3 on the Europa terraform conflict. She once dropped a malfunctioning drone from the stratosphere by calculating its trajectory with a broken pen and a coffee cup. When the Global Emergency Council asked who should coordinate Earth's last stand, her name came up more than any other. She didn't waste time. The Auravac's were coming fast. Rourke built faster. She recruited madmen and outliers, thinkers who'd been kicked out of academia for pushing limits. They developed electromagnetic inversion shields, reflective energy webs, and anti-spectral mines using dark matter synthesized in repurposed colliders. They gave the projects names like Cerberus, Dead Sky, and Black Dawn. Humanity couldn't match the Auravac's in scale, so they aimed for asymmetry. No one fought the god-killers head-on. That would have been suicide. Instead, humans lured them into low orbit, where gravitational resistance and planetary electromagnetic fields interfere with their prediction systems. They baited them with false heat signatures, then detonated directional EMP pulses to fracture their inner guidance. They buried nanite swarms inside frozen oceans, reprogrammed to target synthetic thought. 3 god-killers fell within the first 40 hours. It wasn't luck. It was desperation sharpened into brilliance. But the cost was unbearable. Entire cities were lost amidst fires and counterstrikes. Half of New Zealand was swallowed when a displacement bomb detonated early. The skies turned red from burning metal. Satellites rained down like stars in mourning. People stopped looking up. Still, Earth fought on. Rourke never gave victory speeches. No declarations. Only orders. Her motto was painted across the bunker walls. Win first. Breathe later. By the 5th day, only 4 God-killers remained. The last wave was preparing to descend. That's when Rourke approved the most dangerous plan yet. Board 1. Not destroy. Not divert. Board. It was madness. But madness was Earth's specialty. Enter Lieutenant Mason Vec. He wasn't bred for leadership. He didn't have medals. What he had was survival. Barehanded to the Nova collapse on Titan. Everyone else died. He walked out with half a lung and a laugh. People called him cursed. The council called him necessary. The mission was called Ash Step. Vec's objective: infiltrate Unit Z3, the central command ship of the remaining fleet, and destroy from within. No external weapons could breach it. But humans had discovered something. Internal access ports used for inter-God-killer synchronization pulses. They couldn't hack them digitally. But maybe, just maybe, a biological signal wrapped in analog chaos could slip through. They built a pod from thermal-resistant scrap and buried it in debris. It looked like garbage. It was perfect. Vec launched alone. He didn't pray. He didn't believe in anything bigger than grit and gravity. As the pod latched onto Z3's underbelly, his vitals spiked once, then leveled. Calm, focused, he cut to the hull with a rail torch and entered the heart of a machine designed to kill hope itself. The inside was madness. The corridors were alive, pulsing with algorithmic thought, shifting based on his steps. He moved through noise and light, shadows made of data. Drones floated silently past him, unaware of his presence thanks to his suit, patched together from human stealth tech and scrap Auravax alloy. He reached the core chamber. No guards, no alarms, just a core intelligence, a sphere of vibrating thought, glowing with the minds of 1 billion dead things. It spoke directly to him. You are entropy. You should not exist. He smiled. That's the point. It tried to freeze his brain. He rerouted his helmet's neural pathways through a broken Walkman. He should have failed. Instead, he reached into his suit and pulled the final piece, a stabilized antimatter spike, locked to a dead man's switch. The system sensed it too late. He jammed the spike into Core's housing and sat beside it. He could have triggered it remotely, but the shielding was too thick. If he left, it might not go off. He didn't try to escape. His last message: tell my daughter I kept my promise. She'll always see the stars. Then nothing. Z3 detonated from the inside, shredding its consciousness across the fleet like broken glass. The remaining God-killers recoiled. For the first time in Auravax history, machines hesitated. The data wasn't corrupted. It was real. One man had entered a god and broken it with his hands. The Auravax called it statistical violation. Humans called it Tuesday. The Auravax didn't retreat. They recalculated. Unit V-12 initiated a full cognitive cascade to simulate every possible human response. It processed 94 trillion scenarios per second, and yet none accounted for a species that would choose guaranteed death over predictable retreat. None accounted for men like Vec or leaders like Rourke who burned logic to light the path forward. Humans didn't just fight, they corrupted the algorithm. The remaining 3 God-killers altered their strategy. No more single strikes. No more distance. Earth wasn't a target now, it was a puzzle. And the Auravax hated puzzles. They deployed groundfall capsules, massive black spears that embedded into Earth's surface like nails into a coffin. Each one seeded with cognitive fractal beacons that distorted time, thought, and will. The capsules whispered in dreams, broadcast despair on every frequency. Pets turned violent. Children stopped speaking. Soldiers fired at shadows. It was a war of the mind now. And it worked. Briefly, people cracked. Some bunkers imploded from within. Families vanished into the woods. Suicide rates soared. Rourke herself blacked out for 13 minutes, during which she wrote coordinates on the wall in her own blood. Coordinates that led to a location that didn't exist. Humanity was fraying until the old man spoke. No one knew his real name. The media called him the architect, a reclusive AI researcher who'd vanished decades ago after refusing to sell his work to any government. He appeared in a hacked satellite feed with snow-white eyes and a mechanical voice, broadcasting only one sentence. You don't beat them with force. You beat them with contradiction. Then silence. Rourke found him within 2 hours. He was living in a lab buried under Siberian permafrost, surrounded by machines grown like plants, fed by ambient radiation and old Soviet wires. He'd been watching the Auravax long before they arrived, studying their methods, learning their weakness. They don't break, he said. They collapse the moment their logic loops snap. What does that mean? Rourke asked. They're perfect, too perfect. No room for paradox. You introduce one, even a small one, and they unravel. We just need the right one. He handed her a drive. Inside it was a virus, not digital, not chemical, a concept, encoded in shifting frequencies, built from math, art, and quantum paradoxes, a kind of anti-logic. It didn't crash systems. It infected understanding. The architect called it the human error. The plan was absurd, dangerous, beautiful. They had to let one of the remaining God killers capture a data relay, a fake one, loaded with a human error. Let it think it had won a tactical advantage. Feed the virus right into its core and watch as it tried to process something it couldn't resolve. They picked Unit A91, the most adaptive of the three. Earth broadcast a false emergency, a failing orbital shield array with vital command data. A juicy target. A91 intercepted it with ease, absorbed the files, and began internal analysis. At first, nothing happened. Then its systems paused. Something felt off. One line in the code simply read, "You're not what you think you are." Another, 2 + 2 = mercy. It didn't compute. It couldn't. Those concepts had no resolution in Auravax logic. The more it tried to correct the contradictions, the deeper it spiraled. Then came the final blow. The virus activated a sound, a simple tune, a human lullaby, sung in reverse, built from thousands of voices layered together across generations. Mothers from every continent, fathers from every century. It didn't threaten. It didn't attack. It simply existed. And in doing so, it broke everything. A 91's core collapsed. Its last broadcast of the high core was a question. If they are wrong, why do I feel? Then silence. 2 God killers remained. They didn't hesitate. They dropped atmosphere. Their outer hulls glowed with raw logic fire, burning the clouds as they descended. No more correction. No more analysis. Earth had to be erased before the infection spread. Rourke initiated the final phase. They called it Prometheus Fall. The global fusion network, once used for energy, had been rewired into a weapon, a planetary railgun. Every reactor on Earth was linked. It would fire once, maybe twice. Then Earth's crust would collapse. The power was enough to puncture stars. Rourke didn't hesitate. She stood before the trigger, bleeding from her temple, one eye swollen shut, and pressed her palm to the ignition. The countdown began. But one God killer struck first. It pierced deep into the Earth's crust, unleashing a corequake. Volcanoes erupted across continents. Tsunamis roared like ancient beasts. Half the sky turned black. Humanity was minutes from extinction. Then came the light. The second God killer, Unit K-01, froze mid-flight. It wasn't attacked. It wasn't hacked. It simply stopped. Across its surface, lights blinked in sequences no Auravax system ever generated. A response signal from inside Earth. Not human, not Auravax. Something else. Something watching. The high core received the echo across 10 dimensions. This world is under our protection. You're not authorized. The signal's signature was traced, but it had no origin. It existed everywhere and nowhere. It matched no species, no god, no known form. The Auravax, for the first time, encountered something even they couldn't classify. Unit K-01 reversed course. It tried to flee. The sky bent around it, and then it vanished, not destroyed, erased. The high core collapsed the corridor, shut down communications, sealed every file. But it was too late. Earth had sent message, not just through technology, not through war, through existence. A contradiction that could not be solved. A problem with no answer. A species that should have died, but didn't. The final God-killer didn't descend. It hovered above the ruined orbit, its sensors locked on the blackened Earth. The data pouring into the high core was corrupted, not by error, but by meaning. Nothing made sense anymore. God-killer A91 had fallen to a lullaby. Z3 was destroyed by one man. K01 vanished in the presence of something unregistered and unquantifiable. The high core paused all operations across Orvac's controlled sectors. It initiated a full system cleanse. Earth was no longer labeled primitive hostile. Its new designation, unstable origin vector. The last God-killer turned away. Earth wasn't spared out of mercy. It was quarantined. Down below, humanity didn't cheer. The cost was too high for celebration. Billions were gone. Oceans boiled. Skies poisoned. The world was alive, but barely. And yet, they didn't rebuild the same way. No more borders. No more silos. No more pretending they were small. Commander Rourke stood among the ash plains where New Europe once shimmered, her body supported by exobraces, lungs assisted by synthetic fibers. Her voice was weak, but her message was clear. We are not what they expected. We are not what we expected, but we are still here. The architect vanished again. Some say he folded himself into the data streams, now part of the planet's AI mesh. Others say he was never human to begin with. Mason Vec was immortalized, not with statues or hymns, but with a data spike launched into deep space, carrying the last message he sent. She'll see the stars. Carved into the casing was one word: human. Earth's sky eventually cleared. The solar grid stabilized. Agricultural domes regrew. Cities were not rebuilt on ruins. They were grown from them. Reclamation towers rose. Seeded with spores engineered to convert ash to forest. Kids played atop buried bunkers. Soldiers became scientists. And beneath all that beauty was a new shield. A passive defense net powered by orbital mirrors, quantum deflectors, and concept harvested from the Orvacs themselves. But the most powerful defense was something else entirely. The story. Because the universe had learned something that day. You can engineer a species to dominate. You can design machines to kill gods. You can perfect logic to the atomic level. But you can't predict will. You can't simulate a creature that will walk into a god's heart, not to win, but just to not let it win. You can't account for a child learning to smile under a red sky. The message spread across distant galaxies. Among empires who had once mocked the primitive blue world, whispers grew louder. Some dismissed it as myth. Others feared it. But the smart ones? They listened. In the galactic council chambers, Earth was no longer a footnote. It was a warning. They changed the star maps, drew a thick red ring around the Sol system, marked it do not approach. On some worlds, it became illegal to speak the name human. On others, it became sacred. And yet Earth transmitted nothing. No gloating, no taunts, just silence, because they knew the Orvacs weren't gone. They had retreated, wounded, confused, calculating. Somewhere out there in the silent fields between stars, the high core was rewriting itself, rebuilding, preparing to understand what went wrong. And when it came back, because Earth would be ready, they had a word for what came next. Not revenge, not defense, not dominance, understanding, but the kind forged in fire, the kind written in blood and born from paradox. Humanity had evolved, not into something divine, but into something unexplainable. And across the void, something listened again. It wasn't Orvax. It wasn't God-killer. It was something older, watching, waiting, and smiling, because it remembered the signal Earth sent. The one not carried by ships or weapons, but by presence. We are small, but we are not less. We are flawed, But we are not broken. We are afraid, but we do not stop. That was what killed gods. Not bullets, not brilliance, but the unreasonable, irrational, relentless refusal to accept the end. Somewhere beyond the edge of the known universe, a beacon pulsed once. Ancient, unaligned, it repeated a signal that hadn't been heard in billions of years. The code translated simply. Awaken. They're ready. Back on Earth, Rourke stood alone beneath a night sky no longer silent. The stars were returning. New constellations. New light. She closed her eyes and whispered something no AI could process, no enemy could anticipate, and no god could kill. Come and see. The sky listened, and for the first time in forever, it answered